Sherry here today for come on up. Thanks for coming today.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Sherry Renfro. Can you hear me? And I'm Chief Fiscal Officer at Department of Commerce. And today I'm here for the opportunity to testify on behalf of our budget proposal. And we're pleased to present our past and present in work to demonstrate how our budget will continue to support economic and community development throughout the state. Several developments this past year has positioned the Department of Commerce as a national leader in economic and community development. Commerce has continued to power economic and community development in rural, suburban, and urban areas across the state. Most notably, these developments include the bipartisan Apex bill that was passed in record time and enhanced the state's competitive position on mega projects over $1 billion in capital investment. Apex was signed by Governor Kelly in February of 2022, and the state was able to attract the $4 billion Panasonic project that was announced this past July. Under current law, Kansas has one remaining opportunity to attract an Apex mega project to the state. Also in 2022, Kansas had $7.4 billion in capital investment, half of which was made possible through foreign direct investment in the state. Also, our Office of Registered Apprenticeship was established within the Department of Commerce. The creation of this office will help to retain talent in Kansas and serve as the main connection between industry partners and training providers to help Kansans prepare for jobs in the future. Our international division teamed up with the Greater Wichita Partnership to provide a state training expansion supported booth at the Farnborough Air Show in England. Also, our Kansas Creative Arts Industry Commission programming. Through that, 13 murals were completed in 2022 and 16 new murals were awarded funding in 2022. Additionally, the first ever mural making conference was held in March. Another achievement is after the successful creation of our Historic Economic Asset Lifeline or HEAL program in late 2021, 32 awards were distributed in the spring of 2022. The Office of Rural Prosperity and the Community Development Division in Commerce partnered with the Patterson Family Foundation to offer another year of grants to revitalize downtown buildings. This new program included both a facade grant and a building grant option in the fall 2022 funding round. Our Office of Rural Prosperity has focused on increasing capacity for rural communities. The Rural by Choice Champions Grant Program was launched through an additional partnership with the Patterson Family Foundation and the Kansas Sampler Foundation. The program funds 12 individual champions who are working to address critical challenges in the community or region. And lastly, our Office of Broadband Development was one of the first 8 states in the country approved for funding under ARPA Capital Projects Fund for broadband infrastructure. This program provides $83.5 million in funding to strengthen and improve the broadband infrastructure throughout the state. In July, the Office of Broadband Development launched a competitive grant program to distribute funds and received 141 applications totaling nearly $600 million in requests. Based on our agency's continued success, we are experiencing increased demand for our programs. To continue providing services to empower Kansas businesses, communities, and individuals, we are seeking 9 budget enhancements, which I'll go over briefly. Number 1, the workforce marketing campaign. We are requesting $3 million to create a dynamic marketing campaign that would focus on recruiting Kansans back home and slowing the outward migration of our population. This dynamic marketing campaign would focus on recruiting Kansans who have left the state to return home. The department would contract with the PR firm to conduct research, create a strategy, and implement the campaign. The Kansas City and Wichita metro regions are currently working on their own campaigns as well, and we would work collaboratively with them and the rest of the state to implement a cohesive messaging strategy. Our second enhancement would be for Kansas tourism, and we are requesting $2.2 million for the tourism department to create a marketing campaign and to fund the attraction development grant program. Kansas consistently ranks as one of the lowest states in terms of funding for our state tourism departments. Additional marketing funding would allow Kansas tourism to expand its promotional efforts into new markets and increase visibility, and allow for greater advertising frequency. With the enhancement, we were also asking for funds for the Attraction Development Grant Program, which is a tourism matching grant program with the grant providing up to 40% of the proposed project cost. Currently, there is no dedicated funding for this grant program, and Kansas Tourism provides the funds for this program each year by using existing dollars that would otherwise be available for marketing the state to other visitors. Our third enhancement request is for our international division, and we are requesting $1.2 million that will allow Commerce to continue to work to recruit foreign direct national investment and market Kansas internationally. These funds would be used to hire additional staff to provide funding to support both domestic and international travel for trade missions and other travel associated with export promotion and foreign direct investment initiatives. Traveling to international markets is vital to establishing relationships with international companies that have an interest in investing with Kansas. Without the 2022 trade mission to Japan, new investments such as Panasonic and Kubota that were made in Kansas may not have happened. Also, having an in-country representative would allow for a focus on development leads and building relationships to promote Kansas as a good location for businesses to establish operations. The timing for this is important as supply chain issues have increased interest by international companies in onshoring production so that they can manufacture products in the U.S. Our fourth enhancement request is for our research division, and we are requesting $279,500 to create a research division within the Department of Commerce. And this request would include 2 additional positions that would help to increase our capacity to handle the growing data requests and address the backlog of work that currently exists. Our fifth enhancement is for the Office of Registered Apprenticeship, and we are requesting $500,000 for the newly established Office of Registered Apprenticeship. And registered apprenticeships can play an important role in Kansas in helping Kansas employers and communities bridge the gap between employment and education. This enhancement will be used to support the expansion of current programs and allow for the significant growth across the state, and allowing the office and Kansas Apprenticeship Council to execute upon the strategic plan initiated in 2022. Number 6 is for the Office of Rural Prosperity. We are requesting $2.3 million enhancement to fund 4 important programs within that office. And the first one would be $1.5 million for our HEAL program, which I mentioned earlier. And this HEAL program has proven to be very successful, and this enhancement would provide 20 HEAL building grants a year. The need for continued flexible funding assistance to address gaps in the cost of downtown building improvements is great. Commerce would leverage state funds to pursue potential philanthropic partners to match funds and increase building funding available to rural communities across the state. Also, part of the 2.3 would be $500,000 for an emergency HEAL year-round program. And this enhancement would be used to create an emergency fund to help save buildings that are at a very high risk of loss should the community have a fire, heavy rain, heavy snow, or windstorm that could devastate the building and risk surrounding buildings. Emergency HEAL is intended to be a response to a specific situation that occurred, which caused significant damage to the building and risk historic and structural integrity of the impacted building and surrounding buildings. Also, we would provide $150,000 for rural champions. And this enhancement would be used to match the Patterson Family Foundation grant to provide small grants to support rural development projects included in the Rural Champion Program. The Rural Champion Program created a network of grassroots individuals who tackle critical community projects and identified the needs integral for rural prosperity. This initiative would not only grow the capacity of 12 rural communities to tackle a challenge issue, but would also create a roadmap that other communities can follow to tackle similar challenges in their community. And lastly, within the Office of Rural Prosperity, we're asking for $150,000 for murals and a public art initiative. And this would provide additional funding to grow the number of murals in rural communities across the state. And this funding would support the creation of at least 20 additional murals. Our 7th enhancement request is for Salesforce development, and we are requesting $500,000 enhancement for Salesforce development, which is our agency's CRM software. Currently, our agency uses Salesforce for grant management, economic development projects, contact list management, incentive programs, and application portals, and a variety of other things. To continue to integrate Salesforce platform into the agency, 2 additional positions and an upgrade are needed. One of the positions will be a marketing cloud administrator, and a second position would be a Salesforce developer, which will create a dynamic and scalable Salesforce applications to meet the changing needs of our agency. Number 8 would be for the Kansas Creative Arts Industry Commission, and we were requesting $500,000 for the commission. Kansas Creative Arts Industry Commission remains one of the lowest ranked state arts organizations in the United States for funding from the state. An increase in state investment of $500,000 would allow KCAIC to expand activities to areas of the creative sector currently restricted under NEA guidelines. And our last enhancement would be for childcare. We're requesting $1 million for childcare initiatives. The availability of childcare continues to be an important aspect of economic and community development. An increasing number of economic and community development projects are seeking assistance for childcare initiatives. This enhancement would allow Commerce to work with employers and communities to ensure that early childcare services are available for employees and communities by providing additional support to new development projects that specifically build plans in to provide these services for their workforce. That's just a brief overview of our enhancement request, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Committee, do you have any questions? Representative Akala?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is around the international division. Presently, how many FTEs are there that are involved with this right now?
We currently have 4 FTEs. There's 1 vacant position, so we're looking to increase that by another 3 positions to fully staff that.
So what's the qualification for this position? Being that there could be possible international travel, what's the educational background that's required, or what's the experience that's required for this?
That I'm not for sure. I mean, our director could answer that question for you and get you some more information on what would be required for a position.
A lot of work. I just didn't know if you knew. And the reason I asked that is because we presently have 1 vacancy. We want to hire 2 more FTEs. And so they referenced the Panasonic deal that just was cut for the plant. Of course, we gave them the farm. There'd be no reason for them not to come. But culturally, a lot of these countries like dealing with the same individuals because they built that trust. So does that mean that if you get the FTEs, does that mean that this will rotate among those individuals, the travel, the international travel, the negotiations? I'm just trying to understand how that works because I don't know.
I would imagine that there would be one, project manager dedicated to certain projects. It wouldn't be a rotation of staff that would work, at one similar project. Because I know that relationships are important with, the companies, so it would stay the same.
On the mural projects, how's that money distributed across the state? I'm a big supporter of the arts, and so I'd probably give funding to anything that would apply to arts within the state. So could you tell me how that money is distributed? Is it through an application process, a bid process? They put together a project within their community and decide, we want to do this, and so they apply for the money or some monies?
For the mural project, I believe, and actually I'm not quite sure, and I actually have Rachel Willis here, our legislative liaison. She may be better to answer that question because I don't want to say the wrong information.
In my district, we do a lot of mural projects. Actually, I know that we do a lot of work with Arts Connect and individuals that have done mural projects across the city in Shawnee County. And so I'm curious how that money gets distributed now. If they come up with an idea, do they go to Department of Commerce, say, we got this idea, can we get funding for it? I mean, how's that work?
Chairman, Rachel Willis, Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Commerce. So yes, that's a really good question. And in the past, it's been a competitive grant process, and it requires a 1-to-1 match. So we have an application, you apply, then it's scored and requires that 1-to-1 match. So
it's not free dollars. They have to be able to match that, because I know Arts Connect and some of the arts people within my district have gotten grants from there. I couldn't tell you how much or what, but I just wanted to understand how that is. And so do we ever run out of money before the year's over?
Yeah, so it is a pretty competitive program within the department. So yeah. I don't know the exact amount as far as oversubscribed, but it has been one of our popular programs. So for example, last year there were 14 mural projects granting $93,000, leveraging 46,750 in matching funds. So this request would fund an additional 20 projects. So yeah, and to go back, if I might, to your previous question about the international piece, yes, the thought is that being able to hire an additional person, they would be kind of in market. If you think about how our business recruitment teams work now across the country, they're located in different places so that they can be in that market, familiar with that region, their cultural preferences and tendencies, and to really be able to build relationships
So one
with
of
a
these
consistent
employees
person.
could possibly be international?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
is that the intent? That was kind of what I was trying to drag out. So the
Yes.
intent is so the two FTs could potentially be Mexico, Japan.
Yeah. Eventually, that would be the goal and the
But
process.
the two FTs you're requesting now, is that the lead for where we want to go with them?
So I think we speak to it in the narrative, and I don't want to misspeak and give you the wrong answer. So
I read it.
yeah, so I think the focus, of course, is Japan and then other European countries.
Well, it's left
Based on
up for a
demand.
lot of interpretation. That's why I was looking for more
Yeah.
direction.
No, and I'll follow up for sure, and we can get you some
Well,
of
like I
those
said,
position
it's not a big
descriptions.
deal. I was
Sure.
just curious, and if we're
Yeah.
going to be paying people,
Yes,
outside of
absolutely.
the state or outside of the country, I'd like to know and what the qualifications are, other than just, being there. And because I think that I've always been a believer that I think we have a lot of young people that are graduating from college, Wichita State, K-State, KU, that fall within these probably international guidelines of what they want to do. And I just wondered what the qualifications were that, we just hire Joe Blow because we're already talking to him. Or
Right. No, a very good point.
Okay,
Understood. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Why is the big push to attract all these Japanese companies and not American companies? Do they not want to come to Kansas, the American companies?
Thank you, Chairman, and great question, Representative. And it's not necessarily just focused on Japan or any other kind of particular country, but it is, again, to really focus on how we can make products made here in America again, right? And bring those jobs and create more opportunity for Kansans. So it's that foreign indirect investments. So
Where do the profits stay?
what, I'm sorry.
Where would the profits stay? They go back to Japan? All the profits the company makes, do they go back to Japan?
No, with our economic development study, with the Panasonic project that Wichita State conducted, it shows lots of those profits and dollars spent right here in Kansas.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think this is for Sherry, but whoever, a couple of questions. One, I was interested in the murals because it looked like they were like $20,000 per mural is what the grant would be. And that would not really do one. Would you think, Representative and Sherry?
Paint's cheap, but the artists
deserve,
fairly.
yeah. So I didn't think that was enough money. So when you say it's a 1-to-1 match, that's closer. But we did one in our church that was $70,000. So I mean, I'm wondering where we get with that amount of money. And another question, Sherry, for you. This is just a briefing. We're gonna see more detail. Some of the members are new. We're gonna see more detail when we work your budget.
Correct.
Okay, this is a nice briefing, and I appreciate knowing what's coming. But you mentioned outward migration, and last year down here in this building, I kept hearing from various members that we had grown 89,000 people, and in the brief time before that, and I had read in a Council of State Governments brochure maybe a year or two ago that we had lost like 175,000 people. So I'm wondering where they got that. And you're saying out migration. And this morning in Appropriations Committee, a person who briefed us talked about our migration, and that we were like really like 43rd in the country, which I think would be low. I mean, high outward. I don't know. Can you speak to outward migration?
You don't mind if I could have Rachel
I'd
answer
be
this
glad
question?
to.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
if we need to do this later, we can do it later, but it's coming up, and I know we have outward migration. I'd be interested if we know the causes and the numbers. Thank you.
Great question, Representative. I don't have the specific numbers with me today, but I can definitely pull those and think that probably the U.S. Census, that Census Bureau would be the most reliable data source. So I'll pull that for you and find it.
Okay, because there's quite a disparity in what people believe is happening from a year ago when someone thought we had gained that many people, and I kept hearing it repeated. So this is twice today it's been mentioned, and I want our numbers to be accurate if we're going to talk amongst ourselves. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Representative Curtis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious to know a little bit more about the child care component. It doesn't give a lot of detail, and I know last year, we passed legislation to expand the business child care tax credit to make more businesses able to take advantage of that. I'm not sure if we have any stories or information about businesses that have been able to take advantage of that, and if we've seen any success with that. I know it's a major issue, so I'm just curious if you have any more insight or detail about what you might have in mind to help with that issue.
Well, I know it's definitely more for, our workforce. One of the biggest areas of concern is, getting childcare access for the workers that are coming into work. And that's probably one of the biggest barriers, for getting the workforce in, is having that childcare available. So this would be to hopefully, be able to provide some type of program for them, or help them out with getting the childcare issues solved in that area of workforce development.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. So do you see that as like maybe trying to match businesses with resources so that I'm not sure I'm following what that $1 million will be used for?
And if I can have Rachel answer that, she may have some more information regarding
Sure.
that, if that's okay.
Yes, that would be fine. And Rachel, I'm thinking that last year after we passed that business tax credit, that perhaps the missing component was we didn't say, hey, you're in charge of like going out and telling businesses that this is available. So I think sometimes we'll pass, initiatives, and then we forget that somebody needs to then like communicate that out to the people who can take advantage of it. So I didn't know if this was a part of that or if something different.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And so it's really giving us the ability and the resources to help match them with other resources and capacity to build that out. Because it is one of the very first questions that our team gets asked is about childcare. And we have received lots of questions about the expansion of that. And so I know that it's at the top of people's minds and trying to figure out ways that they can take advantage. So I think there also has been some confusion around it, whether or not they have to open their own or if they can help support and fund a different childcare center. So, and we continue to work with businesses and community leaders, a wide gamut of stakeholders to try and address this problem for them as they think about their business expanding or relocating. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With your first little bullet point on the bipartisan Apex bill on page 2, where is this project located at this time, and what is it looking like right now on the construction of it? And I guess what is the time period for the completion of the project? And what is when is the estimated time for Kansans to see a return in their investment with this project?
Yes, great questions, Representative. So currently, the Apex project, so Panasonic, is located in DeSoto. Right now, weather permitting, they're getting ready to pour concrete. So they've been busy since this fall, right? So November, really moving that dirt and clearing it and leveling it off so that they could really start construction. So you're going to see things really, really ramp up in that area. They're anticipating bringing in the steel the first part of March, assuming that the concrete and that sort of things can stay on target and within their timeline. Completion date. Let me go back through my notes. I believe it's the end of 24, or at least having most of or a good number of their folks in at the end of 24, with full completion looking around 2025. And I can get you the more specifics on that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you, sir. The 8th bullet point, if I may, on the Kansas Office of Broadband Development, the very, very last bullet point on page 2. It says that there was 141 total applicants, nearing total $6 million in requests. What is the department's thought on expanding that program?
Yeah, so obviously just by these numbers alone, you can see that the demand and the need for broadband is extremely high in our state and will continue to be. We've been fortunate enough to be able to receive some federal dollars, and we'll continue to, and there's a federal map, and Jade, our director of broadband, can speak to this at a much higher, more detailed level than I can. But there is some true need around establishing a really solid plan for Kansas and a potential investment by the state of Kansas as we think about the infrastructure, especially towards that middle mile piece. So she testified just yesterday to the Transportation Committee, and there was lots of conversation about that middle mile piece because it is the most expensive, at least to my understanding, right, component as you build out that broadband infrastructure. And so there are other states, even Arizona, for example, that has put state dollars into building out that infrastructure. So it's just like our roads, our physical roads. These are our digital roads, and we know that we need them to compete in the economy, and we know that we need them for education and a lifeline, right, as you think about your health. So
I don't want to steal the show here, but now on page 4, when we're talking about workforce marketing campaign, on the Legislative Research Department's website for the work descriptions and consequences for not funding, on page 100 or 214 throughout, you guys already kind of have a workforce service division. Is this the exact same thing? Are you wanting more money, or where can I find, is this going to be a new division or subdivision within the commerce budget?
good question. And thank you for doing some homework. I'll have to find that page specifically and review it myself. No, this isn't going to be creating a new division. This will be creating a new project, right? So it's the marketing campaign, and it will be closely tied to workforce, but then other divisions within commerce, right? So as we think about tourism, you have to first be a visitor before you even think about moving here, right? So tourism will play a role in that. Our own comms and marketing team will play a role, and obviously business development and recruitment as we think about what are businesses wanting when they expand. And what are they looking for in a workforce? So there'll be lots of kind of moving pieces to this. And I would say that this is one of probably my favorite budget enhancements, just because I think it really meets a need that everyone's talking about, right? We need more humans. We need more bodies in the state. And the concept behind this is really unique in the sense that it's not just going to be a typical marketing campaign. We've got a fancy website, and it's just going to sit on the internet. This is really going to involve local stakeholders. So from the very beginning, so when we start to do research, we're going to interview folks, have focus groups on the ground, talking to Kansans at all different places, right, about what they need and how they think they can grow Kansas, and why maybe their grandkids left or their kids left, or why they left and maybe why they came back. But then it's going to take that into really building that message, as well as identifying what are the strategies and tools that we need to bring people back. And then us building that out and then returning to them and asking them to use it, right? So wanting those local folks to make that ask for us, because we know that the Department of Commerce, we could probably send out a lot of emails and make a lot of cold calls. Nobody's going to move because Rachel from Commerce called and asked them to, or we have this fancy new website now. But they might move because somebody from their local community that they grew up in, or where their grandparents are, have reached out with this really cool tool or whatever that strategy is, and is asking them and has made some really good points, and now they're going to think about it, right? And we know that it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take some time, but
Oh, great.
please.
Well, I think I'll show some grace, because I have a handful of questions. We brought up the word tourism, and again, I was looking at the performance-based budget and just noticing how, of course, the Department of Commerce job to build increased numbers of visitors to Kansas, but not only visitors, but people who would like to move here. Then it talks about the statewide transit guest tax collections, and is with tourism and relocating people here, is there any buzz between your department and maybe the Department of Revenue of possibly looking at any way or any minutia to lower taxes in the state of Kansas to brighten up the package for individual persons to move here?
Well, I was thinking of where you were going with that question, and that was not where I was anticipating at all. And I don't have a good answer for you there. I will tell you that we're always working hard to find ways to really capitalize on economic development opportunities, while we're creating a high quality of life for all Kansans. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Arlen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Back to the childcare question that Representative Curtis was asking. Some of this is spark money or not? Okay, this is just in the commerce budget.
Yes.
Okay, and the other question, was there an executive order, or didn't the governor do something early in this summer, last summer, to provide $53 million or something for directly to go to the workers in childcare? You're nodding. Say yes.
Yes. Yes.
I want to hear you say.
Yes.
And of course, I don't know that you know, but if you know, how did that work? Is it spent? Did it help? Did it? Do we have any outcome on that, or can you find out?
Yes, I can find out. I don't know the
Yeah,
specifics.
because it was administration, not
Yes.
you. But
Right.
I thought it was a really necessary thing. I was very happy to see it happen. And I know we've got grants applied for spark money for childcare. So I would assume, and if you're not, I would assume that you would want to work with those other opportunities and build a childcare package. And so it's hard for us to see one item like this and not know where it's going. So if you can kind of bring that forward later.
Yes, that's a very good point. And yeah, we will work on creating more of a holistic picture for you as it relates to childcare.
About 3 years ago, at a local chamber regional event, I made the point that if we didn't consider childcare a business, we were not going to be able to support our businesses. And our community heard me, and they started working very hard on a task force for childcare. But we did that 25 years ago when I was a city commissioner, and we just never have been able to fund it. We had people come in and see Clyde Jones, if you've ever heard of him, just turned 100, but he came in when he was about 75, and he had done a study talking about how there was no childcare for overnight, for people who work through the night. So, that's something I'd like us to be sure and consider when we're looking at ways to help with childcare. And a few years after that, Fort Riley added 6 childcare centers that took care of about 120 kids, I think, each. And they're really, really upscale places. And the requirements to be a child care provider with the military are very high standards. So I would hope that we would maybe incorporate something that we could learn from their experience, because in one place, there are 7 child care facilities now at Fort Riley. So, I don't know how they do that. And we've talked about having businesses put childcare in their business. And some that have looked at it very interested in doing that for their workers. But the liability insurance is frightening them, and they are not willing, because children do die in childcare. They do not want to do it after they research it. Is there anything coming about liability coverage for businesses? I would suggest that we look into that. I mean, we could pay a premium for childcare facility liability for a company, be a lot less money than some of the other things we might do. Some suggestions. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Representative. Any other questions? Rachel, I got a couple.
Okay. Oh,
Get you out of
Okay.
here. So, on tourism, 2.3 million. That ain't even a buck a person. You know what I'm saying? How do you try to sell it? I mean, I know I've ran this up the tree last year, but one example that I see is Oklahoma. They do Discover Oklahoma, TV show on a major network once a week, and vendors get to help pay for the show, but all it does is promote Oklahoma. And if tourism is ever going to amount to anything other than keeping a few people working, that needs to at least double. And the physical note on that show was about $1 million for the year. So there's all these other programs for murals and grants and whatever. But here's what frustrates me. In approach today, there was $34 billion showered on Kansas from COVID. Billion. Of that, they said, only 2.6 billion. That's still a lot of money with a B. The state had any much of a say on. So we're going to find out all of that next week. But I just think for some reason we need, if you really want to do tourism, let's do it. And if not, I guess we go to Oklahoma. No, just kidding. Anyway, but that's they need the money. And the other thing I was going to ask you on this international division, is there any way that local Kansas businesses could interact to help promote some of their companies is that, I mean, are we trying to get people over here? Are we trying to get some of our people who have stuff here in their face? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yep. And I think a good example, and you're exactly right, that it's both us promoting our exports, right, and showing them what Kansas has to offer, so that they will come here, and we do partner, whether it's with the Farnborough Air Show or some of these other kind of larger. I can't think of the right word. It's not a convention, but that sort of thing. We do partner and work with other businesses and economic developers experts across the state. So like specifically with that Farnborough Air Show, we worked with the Greater Wichita Partnership with all of their aviation and that specific industry. So yeah, we absolutely work with local Kansas businesses, highlight what they're doing to other foreign markets. Yeah.
The last question you may not know today, and here's where I'm going with this. I'd like to know how many unfilled FTEs you might have, and somehow find out what the dollar amount of that is, and try to throw that into the tourism pot to see if we can't grow the tree. Because if they're unfilled, they're not doing nothing. It's been a year. Let's take that money and give the people in tourism a chance to do something great.
Sure. Let me do some adding and we'll get that number to you.
So you've been there a long time. I know you've done a great job. Does anybody else have anything for the good of the Representative Curtis?
Well, Mr. Chairman, what your line is of questioning just brought to mind some of the regional things that are going to be happening in the Kansas City area. We have the NFL draft that's coming up in a few months. We also have the World Cup that is going to be in the Kansas City area. That is definitely going to be a regional tourism and opportunity, really, for the world's eyes to be on Kansas. And we should be a part of that regional planning, which I hope we are. I know a lot of it is based in Missouri, but I know that it's going to definitely affect our area. We will have 4 teams actually living in the Kansas City area for those couple of months while the World Cup games are happening, so all across the United States. So anyway, and then the new international airport is opening soon. So you're exactly right. We have so much opportunity, but it's going to take some commitment financially for us to be really a fully participant in that. So thank you for bringing that up, and I hope you don't mind me just adding on to your comments there.
I've heard on the World Cup that all rooms may be rented for 100 miles. So it's a huge thing. It's a great thing for Candace. And so if there's no more questions, thank you very much. And take a break. You've been there a long time. Good job.